SimsEclaire here and welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, we are doing something rather different for this channel. I'm actually really excited about this. So this video is going to be half like story time, half me going over what I'm doing in the build, so I hope that that's okay. But basically today's build is entitled Autumn Carnival, and it's inspired by a place I used to go to when I was a child. So as we all know, autumn is my favorite season and it is officially here. And I thought because, October is starting and I have an idea for a whole series to do during the entire month of October, I thought I would kind of start it off by doing very autumn themed, very cozy kind of builds. And when I think of autumn, I immediately think of this place. So when I was younger, I used to go to this apple picking farm, and it was an entire, it was like an 8-acre farm. Like, it was huge. It was gigantic, and it spread across, there was a lake in the middle of it, and there was forests attached to it. It was huge, and it was beautiful, and I used to go there. We went every single year for 4 years in a row, and I know that doesn't seem like a lot. It might have even been 5 years, but I know that doesn't seem like a lot, but I don't know. Autumn was always a time of huge celebration in my family because all of the holidays, or the main ones, show up in autumn and winter. So it was a huge family time for us, and both of my parents always went, and that was kind of odd because my dad worked a lot. He was in the restaurant industry and my mom was in retail, so both of them kind of had a hard time getting off of work, but they were both always off in the autumn holidays, so doing things like this always kind of stuck with me. But basically it was this giant farm that had an apple picking section that was gigantic. There was 800 trees in this apple picking section, but on top of that it had a haunted house, a haunted hayride, a lake in the middle that in the summer you were allowed to swim in autumn they blocked it off because it was quote unquote too cold, but it had an inflatable Loch Ness monster in it that would kind of move in and out of the water, so as you drove around to get into the farm it changed positions. It had food, it had animals, it was huge, it was amazing. It had this little shop area, which if we tune into the video you can kind of see my rendition of the shop area being built right now. It's a classic red barn, and that was basically the whole theme of this part, or this, I want to say it was almost like a park, but that was kind of the whole theme of it, was that it was this classic red farm, that red farm barn thing, that they converted into this really fun, awesome little experience. And the haunted house was inside a barn, the shop was inside a barn, and then everything else was pretty much outside. And it usually rained right before we went, so everything was always super muddy, and they always had that wet hay smell that is sickening but also so nostalgic at the same time. It was always great, and we always went with my closest friend and my sister's closest friends and all their families, so it was a really fun time. It was a great experience. But so basically there was this shop area that was kind of right towards the entrance. There was a shop, and it had all of the farm's produce, and it was half outside, half inside, and they also sold food. So they had apple cider, they had hot dogs, they had hamburgers, they had classic American food. And I was trying to get the feel of that establishment. Now obviously you can't build something exactly like that in The Sims because we don't have a lot type that works, so this lot ends up being a park, and it's kind of odd. So the retail part of it doesn't function, but obviously you could switch it over to a retail store and just put the fruit and vegetables that I put in this barn area here up for sale, and that could work. But as a whole it functions as a park. Now going into the build just for a little bit, we are building a little path here, and this is going to lead to a kind of stage-like feature that I created. So the park that I used to go to, there was music. It wasn't always live. Sometimes it was just speakers playing overhead, but there was music, and it always played right by where all the food was. So I figured that it'd be kind of cute, especially since I can't really build a haunted house attraction here in The Sims. I mean, I can try, and I might end up doing it for October anyway, but it's not it won't be completely functional. I thought we could kind of scrap the haunted house attraction and just do a seating area, and so I end up giving them this little deck here, it's right next to the ice skating rink, or not ice skating, rollerblading rink, which I also thought could kind of replace the haunted house attraction. Like, I thought the two of these together could bring you just as much joy as a haunted house. Although maybe not for me, because I love haunted houses. And that one was actually kind of frightening, despite the fact how low budget it was. I mean, it could have been because I was a child, but it was such a cool thing to watch. But anyway, so on this deck, I don't remember if I decorated here. Oh, no, I do. So I get a dance floor because a part of me kind of just pictured them like line dancing or square dancing. I know that that's totally like cliche and almost stereotypical for a barn, but that's kind of what I pictured. And then I give them a whole bunch of different instruments. So, because I figured you could maybe, if you place a bar here, I figured you could run it as a lounge, and then like the different musicians could come and play music and your Sims could dance, or you could have one of your Sims play the music for others to dance. And then, like I said, the place where I went sold traditional like funnel cakes and hot dogs and hamburgers, so I wanted to do something similar to that, so I gave them the American food stall because I know that sells hot dogs, hamburgers, veggie dogs, and veggie burgers, so I figured that that was close enough, because I don't think we have funnel cake in the game, which would definitely be a great addition. And then I also gave them the fall drink stand. It's like these warm, I think there might be coffee and tea and then apple cider, but it's not the same thing as what's in the winter one, so I'm not 100% sure exactly what drinks are in there, but I definitely know that there's warm apple cider, which is my favorite drink. But over here, I'm kind of creating a little kids section because there was a couple of different toys and stuff and, items for kids to play on at this park, so that I used to go to as a kid, so I wanted to add just a couple of, like, playground equipment. I got the, what's it called? I can't remember what it's called. Oh, the monkey bars and the swing set. And then, as I said in my very long intro, the place also had a haunted hayride, and basically we would all load up on this old pickup truck and there would be hay. Now, we don't have hay in The Sims. I spent forever trying to find some, but we don't have any, so I went with boxes instead. And you'd sit on these barrels of hay and they would take you through the woods on the background of this farm property, and there'd be people dressed up in masks and costumes, and they would like jump out at you, and they'd like tell you a little bit of the history. So I tried to incorporate that by doing this debug truck, and I put a couple of boxes in there, like I said, for the people to sit on, and I drew like a little path through that little open section of the gate. I figured that could be where the truck kind of drove out. And then over here is where the apple orchard is going to be. Now, you won't see me decorate that till the end because I wasn't quite sure how I wanted to do it, because you can see it right now. I'm trying to put trees here, but it keeps like putting them into the ground. Like, the trees aren't growing, they're not staying grown, and I really wanted them to, so I decided to leave it, and I figure it out at the end. But over here to the right, so the place also had a corn maze. I know you guys are probably all just like, oh my god, how big was this place? It sounds magical. It really was. It was like Mary Poppins' bag for autumn activities. It literally had, like, the corn maze wasn't that big, but it was still so much fun, and I always got lost in it. But we don't have corn in The Sims, so I figured I could do a hedge maze, and that would kind of be similar. It would have the same effect, and I had a lot of fun kind of trying to design this maze. Initially, I was going to have it end at the tree, but then I realized that the point of a maze is for you to be able to get out of it, and if I had it end at the tree, you wouldn't actually be able to leave the maze. Like, all of your Sims would just get stuck. And then I started thinking that would be a great way for your Sims to die, is if they got stuck in a maze. But I was like, if this is supposed to be a kids attraction, I highly doubt that's supposed to be how it works. So I do end up at the end kind of like shifting some plants around, and I have the exit be right at the edge of the lot, almost as though this is the last thing that like you're supposed to do. You come out and you exit, and then this is how you leave the park. But you can kind of see, as I've been talking, I'm slowly building this little path here, and I have a couple of alcoves because there's always like little statues and stuff in corn mazes like this. So I end up putting in, I do believe I left it in this video, I end up putting in me just placing a couple of the different spooky items that we got with the spooky stuff pack. Like, I enlarge some of the pumpkins and stuff, but first I go and I do some landscaping because the lot was looking really bare. Like, there's all this like empty space in between where I put all of the different attractions and like the walkways and stuff, so I was trying to fill it up a little bit more, just trying to make it look a little bit more cozy, homey like. Even though this is a giant farm, I was trying to make it look filled in, so I was doing my best. And I end up placing these chalkboard signs at the beginning and the end of the maze, and then also at the entrance to the orchard. I figured that they were kind of like directional signs, or maybe like price signs, because I definitely thought that you would get like the tickets, or the quote unquote the tickets, as you entered, but maybe certain activities were a little bit more. Because I remember when we went to the farm, it was a price to enter. I think it was like $5 a head, but then you still had to pay for the food, and you had to pay for whatever apples you picked, but included in the price was the ability to go into like the haunted house and to sit on the farm with your family and like enjoy the atmosphere. So there were a couple of things that you still had to pay some extra money for, but as you can see, this gnome here, that's one of the statues that I chose. And I also did a little seating area and just a couple of different other things. Like I said, I enlarged some pumpkins. And then over here, I wanted to incorporate as much of the spooky stuff pack items that we got, because we got a couple of different activities, and one of them was pumpkin carving. And now that was not one of the activities at this orchard thing, but there was a tiny little pumpkin patch. Again, I know there's so much stuff at this orchard, but you could do like a little bit of pumpkin picking, and I didn't have enough space, I thought, to create an actual pumpkin patch. And I also thought it'd look, in terms of The Sims, I thought it would look a little repetitive, because I had the orchard and then the maze, which is all very green, very lush. And so I wanted to incorporate the pumpkins, but without being so on the nose. So I thought of doing like an old set of stables. Like maybe this farm wasn't as new, maybe it wasn't being used as a farm anymore, and it used to house horses, so they had all these stables. So I thought maybe they were now using the stables as little activity zones for kids, like the kids who are too young to go in the maze, or were too young to, you know, do the rollerblading and the, it's not in this, but the haunted house, you know, all of that stuff. The kids that were just at the cusp, not quite able to do all those activities yet, they had these little like cubbies for them where their parents could sit with them, or their grandparents. If the grandparents came to the farm with them, they could sit with the younger kids, since they couldn't run around and walk around as much, and they could just have a good time with, you know, the youngins. And so that was kind of my idea for this little section over here. So as you can see, I have the two end stables where I put just a couple of different junk items to make it look like they were a little bit older. And I also blocked them off so the Sims, I mean, theoretically your Sims can walk through them because they're debug items, but I blocked them off to kind of keep your Sims out. And then I'm placing a carving station in each one, and then also a chair for an older Sim to sit with the child. And I'm doing a little landscaping over here, and then I also add a couple of seats. I figured that if you were waiting for the hayride, you could sit here, or if you were waiting to go into one of the carving stations, you could sit there and wait. But as I said, this lot also functioned as a park, so having as much seating available is also nice, because a whole bunch of Sims kind of just like show up at parks randomly, so it's kind of nice to just have extra places to put your Sims, so that way they're not too surrounded by people. At least that's how I feel. I never like it when there's too many Sims by my Sim. It makes me nervous. It's probably because I'm socially awkward myself. I don't like being surrounded by too many people, especially right now with everything going on. So I'm kind of just like, yes, stay away. Give me all the private places in this park as possible. But we're going around and doing just a little bit more landscaping. I decided to leave it in because each one is a little different, and it also was always so close to me doing a major part of this build that I was like, if I cut this out, I risk cutting out too much of the actual build. So there you saw I did the lines for the orchard. I kept going back to it and trying to figure it out, and then like leaving it and then going back. So I don't end up finishing it until the very end. It's the last thing that I do. So I decided to just go in and start working on this little interior part that we have here. So this is going to be the bathrooms. And there is 2 bathrooms, and that's because I believe that's the amount you have to have for a park, if I remember correctly. I did build this a little bit ago. I finished it about a week ago, so I don't quite remember the exact items that I needed for it to count as a park, but I do know that we have all of them. I ended up adding some chess tables at the end just because that was one of the things that we needed, but I'm trying to figure out a way to cover up this wall space, and then I realized that the walls were on like a medium height, so I did decide to change that and I lowered them. It was kind of cheating, but I figured that it was okay. And then I'm not sure if you saw me at the beginning, but I did this little door trick. It acts as though it's like a sliding door. It doesn't look perfect, but I kind of liked how it I don't know how it made the build feel. And so I put this giant wreath on the front, and then in here is going to be the little shop center. So like I said, they had options for different like actual food, like they had jams and honeys and apple ciders, but then you could also just buy different produce items. So I do fill up, I have a couple of these baskets here from Jungle Adventure, and I used them all over the place inside of this building because they kind of just reminded me of the different apple picking boxes. Wow. The apple picking bags that we used to have when we went to this place. So I filled up a couple of these baskets with some apples and some different produce items, and then I also filled this one. I end up deleting the apples and I fill it with just some bread. I don't remember this place actually having bread, but I thought it kind of fit with the rustic theme. Oh, and then there I wanted to do like some baked goods, and I was gonna put them inside the refrigerator so that way they could have, you know, different items to buy or to set up for sale, but it deleted the baked goods the moment I put the plate down, and then it wouldn't let me delete the plate. Like, I was struggling so hard with trying to delete that plate, and I'm just like, why isn't it letting me do this? What is going on? And I just couldn't. I was so annoyed. I just gave up. And so when you download this, there will be some weird empty plate sitting there, but just ignore it. Or like, I'm gonna try and see if I can get it to delete, but I was having so much issues with it. But going over here, this is where I'm setting up the tables for purchase. So I have a table of apples, peppers, and a couple of other different produce things, and then also a table of pumpkins. And I just like sized down and sized up some of the pumpkins just to give them a little bit of a different look. And then over here is just a random table with some junk on it. I figured that this farm was still owned by the family, so they still had a couple of their items. Even if it was like the off season for the farm, they had a couple of different things that they had to keep around. And then over here I add another table with a couple of different fruits and vegetables on it, a gasoline can, and then some garlic on the wall. I don't know what the item was, but I remember when we were inside of this farm with all the shopping in it, it had something hanging on the walls. I don't think it was garlic. I'm like 95% sure it was not garlic, but it was something that looked like those strings of garlic, so I decided just to hang those up. And then out here I added some more cash registers, and I figured that this is where your Sims could buy, if we had that system, it's where your Sims could buy the tickets to get into the actual park. So I figured that your Sim could come in and they could buy produce. Like, this could be like a local produce stand, but if they wanted to get into the park itself, they had to pay a different price. And that's also why there is an entrance to the orchard before you can get into the park, because I figured the orchard was definitely more along the lines of a produce thing. So I figured that they let you into the orchard for free, but obviously you had to pay for your apples. So the entrance was like guarded, and it was like a one-way only type thing, and you could go in that way, but you had to come out through the park and then pay for your apples, or pay to get like do the activities in the park, whichever one you were looking to do. This is that side entrance, by the way, the one before you get into the park. I just decorated with another one of those chalkboard signs and then a little plant decoration. And then we are about to start working on the orchard, although I decided to add another seating area over here. And this is where I realized, and it's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of, these little benches, because that's what they are benches. Those things that I was using from, what's it called, the camp pack, get camping, that's not what it's called, but you guys know what I meant, outdoor retreat, those do not count as benches, and I don't know why. So I had to go through and I had to change all of those benches so that they could count. But besides that, this is it for this build. So I hope you all enjoyed this one. If you did, please leave a like and be sure to subscribe to my channel, and I will see you all next time. Bye!